Have you ever been told that you are what you eat? I've always thought this phrase was weird, but maybe that's because I don't look like 1,300 pounds of peanut butter. In general, eating food has significance in bringing people together socially, even in spite of differences of culture, class, political opinion, education, religion, and more. But in our society today, we are often told that what we eat equates to what we're worth. We'll feel guilty for eating Hershey's bar, drinking some Sprite, or heaven forbid, getting McDonald's. While it is clear that food affects health and that different types of food affect your health differently, there's a certain view in our society today that food is almost dangerous instead of being humans' main source of energy. The moralization of food has become commonplace, where we associate healthy with good and unhealthy with bad, and then go even further to connect that to our own worth. In fact, a 2022 study reported that it is well known that large parts of the population suffer from a problematic worrying about the quality and quantity of food. The moralization of food is a problem that's deep-rooted in our society and has harms in so many different situations. So, today, we'll go through a full-course meal by first looking at the more in-depth causes of food moralization. Then, we'll examine the harms it has on our world, and lastly, figure out how we can fix this. So, let's get started with an appetizer and investigate why this is even a problem in the first place. At the most basic scientific level, the only foods that humans need in large quantities to survive are the three macronutrients: proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids. When it's put like that, it seems pretty simple, right? But there are many causes in our society that have made this much more complicated. First, there's unrealistic standards of beauty that companies use to capitalize on people's insecurities. Because beauty is mainly and wrongly centered on those who are thin, it is typically related back to what the general public is eating and gives the implication that in order to achieve beauty, you must only eat the most nutritious foods, even though, of course, we know this is false. Therefore, in order for us to feel good about our appearance, and by default ourselves, we make sure to be careful about what we eat, even when it comes to a detriment to ourselves. After all, you can't have too much meat because it's linked to heart disease. You can't have carbs because they hurt your blood sugar. You can't have fats because they hurt your cholesterol. So wait, let's see. What can you actually have then? This leaves us with pretty much just water and salad. But as registered dietitian Christine Byrne of Everyday Health explained in December of 2022, eating only salad for every meal could lead to deficiencies in other nutrients. Short of health conditions like celiac disease, this demonstrates that we need to be able to eat food without holding guilt, since pretty much any food can arguably be bad for us. Next, another huge cause of this is diet culture. Diet culture perpetuates these beauty standards, as well as providing a variety of meal plans, recipes, and more to all make you feel more guilt-free when you eat certain foods. Diet culture tells us that we can't feel comfortable in our own bodies. It tells us that anyone who doesn't fit a certain ideal of appearance should be demonized. And it tells us that health is determined only by personal choice, and that if we do enough exercise, if we skip enough meals, or if we eat enough vegetables, that we can achieve some arbitrary standard of health or beauty. However, while specific statistics vary, the consensus has been clear. Experts generally agree that personal actions like the food we eat only account for around half of our overall health. Genetics, environment, and your childhood are all huge influences in your health that are completely out of our control. But we often aren't told this because it just so happens that diet culture is pretty efficient at getting us to spend our money. So both unrealistic standards of beauty and diet culture are huge contributors to the moralization of food in our society. And now that we've had an appetizer, let's get right into the main course by asking about the harms of moralizing food. One of the biggest lies society ever told us is to watch what you eat, as if you eat with your eyes closed, or what about blind people? Sometimes watching what we eat can go too far though, and may even lead to restricting, dieting, or binge eating, which is one of the first harms I'll be discussing today. While at first it may seem like this is something that would really only affect people with eating disorders, in reality, the way we frame food in our society affects everyone. Even for people who don't have an eating disorder, they often still feel pressure to eat a certain way, which is what is sometimes referred to as disordered eating behaviors. As NPR reported just last month, during the pandemic, we saw disordered eating behaviors skyrocket, especially in children and teenagers. And the moralization of food only feeds these feelings of shame around food. For example, it can be as simple as someone not letting themselves eat more than one cookie even though they wanted to. Some people may also take this as an opportunity to create rigid diets, follow calorie restrictions, or even use drugs. After all, just recently in the end of 2022 and in the past few months of 2023, there's been a craze around Ozempic, a diabetes drug that many are endorsing for the purpose of weight loss, even though the dangers of it are often overlooked. Forbes even explained on March 1st that most people who take Ozempic will experience common side effects, but there are also some people who develop pancreatitis, vision changes, hypoglycemia, gallbladder problems, and even cancer. I know it sounds great. On top of that, though, it is also really only suitable for short-term weight loss, and a lot of doctors do not recommend it for weight loss. Ozempic's popularity has only spread further through enthusiasm on social media platforms. These sorts of trends with messaging around drastically altering your body can largely exacerbate eating disorders, which affects all shapes and sizes of bodies. Another effect of this is also how it's harmful for those with less accessibility to food, which is most commonly referred to as food insecurity. Not all people have the same access to nutritious food, and that can be due to their geographic area called food deserts or their socioeconomic class. Sometimes those who even could have access to food may still not choose to not buy it anyway in order to save money and feel healthier about themselves, despite, of course, food being absolutely necessary for survival. Even at our very own Pittsburgh High School, the U.S. News and World Report reveals that 55% of our school is economically disadvantaged, and 47% of school students qualify for free lunches. Moralizing food only further adds to the stigma around those who live in rural areas that don't have grocery stores nearby, as well as those, like some in our own town, who just struggle to put food on the table in the first place. Next, let's wrap up with getting some dessert or talk about the solution to this problem. And by the way, while we're on the topic, no, desserts aren't just empty calories. As for the solution, there first needs to be a change educationally. We need to raise awareness about this as a topic and make sure that we recognize how this can be harmful for those who have had difficult relationships with food. Second, we have to acknowledge that food is not good or bad, right or wrong. As put by an article on the online publishing platform Medium in 2020, an apple didn't win the Nobel Peace Prize and a cookie didn't rob a bank. Food has no moral value. Now, don't get me wrong, we can still classify foods as being nutritious or not, but we shouldn't assign it to our worth or to having that moral value. Being unhealthy doesn't mean you're intrinsically worth less than someone who's more healthy, because health itself isn't something you're morally obligated to have. We need to be able to listen to our own bodies about what to eat and how much to have. This approach towards eating is proven to improve self-esteem, body satisfaction, depression, and anxiety, as the organization Central Coast Treatment Center described in March 2022. There's this fear about ourselves that if we let ourselves have a little more leeway with what we eat or with a specific food, then we won't have the self-control to stop ourselves. However, restricting yourself from eating something you want, even in small situations, often only psychologically makes you want it more. Essentially, we just need to recognize that we can let ourselves eat those cookies. Even cookies can provide crucial calories that give us energy. To clarify though, with that being said, I am not endorsing overconsumption or suggesting that we shouldn't care about what we eat at all. Instead, the solution that I propose is called gentle nutrition, which is a term used in anti-diet culture spaces that proposes a very individualized plan of health. It first suggests that we have to give ourselves complete permission to eat. Then it encourages listening to what your body tells you about what to eat or when to eat through hunger cues. That way you aren't overeating or undereating. And lastly, gentle nutrition focuses on making sure you get enough nutrients throughout the day to sustain your life. Writer Ashley Broadwater in Well and Good reports from November 2022 that gentle nutrition is all about flexibility. Contrary to what many people have been led to believe, you don't have to be super rigid and controlled about what you eat in order to give your body the nutrients it needs. Let's take this concept of gentle nutrition as an opportunity to re-examine the way we think about health and food. The moralization of food is so commonplace that we often don't realize that we can allow ourselves to have better, more free relationships with food. One of my favorite quotes from an unknown source that I've heard about this topic says, "Is a life without bread objectively better than one with it?" I don't know about you all, but I know what my answer to that is, and it's not just because croissants are my favorite food. So, today, we walked through a whole meal. We're dissecting first the root of food moralization, then the harms of it in our society, and lastly, the solution. While maybe you aren't able to have your cake and eat it too, you can have your cake and not feel guilty about it. Your own choices that you make about your health only account for one portion of it, and there are a lot of other factors that hold just as much weight. Therefore, having cookies is not only okay for your health, but giving yourself the freedom to listen to your hunger cues can be instrumental in ensuring you have the energy to be healthy in the first place. And just maybe, like me with peanut butter, you might find that you get tired of cookies after a while. But either way, I'll leave you with this. You don't have to feel shame for giving your body what it needs. Because while constant messaging on advertising campaigns, trends on social media, and even our own minds will tell us differently, at the end of the day, you aren't what you eat.